what this building is this is the D.P.Wigley building downtown Racine. Probably built it around 1887, maybe even earlier than that. It might have gone even back into the 1860s, quite possibly into the 1860s, I would think. But this is the bottom part of the D.P.Wigley, this part that you never see if you come up Wisconsin Avenue. You see the old D.P.Wigley with the loading docks and everything on it. But this is down below. This is down by the river. There's a drive alongside the river that you could go down in the D.P.Wigley building. It's right there. And I love this old the field stone that they have, and then the old bricks up in here. And I've always loved these yellow doors. Windows, they just stood out to me. So that's what I'm doing here. I got a lot of work to do. I have something really tricky to do on this thing eventually, but I have to get this under painting, but it's not a painting, under colored pencil, before I can start on what I really want to get done. So I got to get back to work. This is good therapy.
David Patener Wigley was one of the most successful and substantial and enterprising businessmen of Racine. Mr. Wigley had been ill for the last 6 months, and while it was anticipated that he could not get well, the announcement that he was dead was received as an expression of great sorrow. He was born in North Wales on November 25, 1856. His boyhood days were spent in a humble farming community. Becoming dissatisfied with the prospects of advancement and financial betterment, he decided to make his fortune in the United States. During the month of March of 1881, he came to Racine, securing employment at the farm of David Jones in the town of Mount Pleasant. For 1 year, he worked on the farm and availed himself to the district school facilities. After this, he came into the city. For 11 years, he was employed at the G.I.K.'s threshing machine company. In the year 1893, during the Panic of Racine, he became a solicitor and a salesman for the Star Mills. He was a hard and honest worker and rapidly became posted into the milling business. In 1895, he purchased the oldest flour and feed establishment in the city of Racine, that of the Kent and Smith on College Avenue. Rapidly he forged ahead, and 5 years later he purchased the old Turner Hall on College Avenue, remodeled the structure, and made the ground floor into one of the most modern feed facility stores. Later the building was again rebuilt and is now the College Avenue Orpheum. Mr. Wigley not only built up a large retail business, but also was immersed in the wholesale trade, and he bought a site on Meade and A Street and erected a 2-story depository. In 1905, he bought the Emerson Mills on 3rd and Wisconsin Street, the one that we know today.
This is transfer tape. This is what they use in vinyl lettering. It's one of my trade secrets. Instead of using Frisket for my airbrushing, I've been using this stuff for years and years. It has a real quick release on it. You just got to really burnish it down. And what it's going to be doing, it's going to be picking up the lead that I drew on this piece of acetate. Now I'll remove it. You can see that I still have plenty of lead still sitting on the acetate, and I can still use that later on. But on this masking tape, you can see that I have the image on here also. It's not as good as it was, but for me it's going to be fine. And this nice thing about it, it's repositionable. So if you get it in the wrong position, then you can just replace it, put it back on. So now I'll just cut this figure out with my X-Acto knife, and I'll start penciling in the ghosted image of this guy. So now I'm doing is just going to be cutting out the shovel, so I can give you an idea of what's going to be going on here.
It became the largest and the most modern feed houses in the whole entire state. He also erected a large building on the Racine Junction.
All right, so if I was to airbrush this, I would just use this as what I'm going to be doing, and this would be the gray, the brownish gray area down here, and this would be the brown for the wood, and then once again it's the brownish gray up here for the handle. But I'll be using colored pencils. But basically what we're talking about is the same technique that I'm using for colored pencils I'd be using for my airbrush.
On August 31st, 1892, Mr. Wigley was united in marriage to Miss Jane Jones of Venaco, Ohio. From a poor mechanic, he overcame the competition that confronted him and became one of the largest and most prosperous businessmen in the Bell City. So looking down at the D.P.Wigley from high above 3rd Street, we're looking down at actually what they called the back of D.P.Wigley. The front of D.P.Wigley evidently was at the railroad tracks and the shipping lanes on the river. About 1888, looking west-northwest from 3rd and Main, at that time it was called the Emerson Linseed Oil Manufacturing Company. Even then, they exported millions of linseed oil cakes for health-conscious Europeans. Now take a look at this. Note the man on the horse-drawn carriage. This is actually the 3rd floor of the building. Sometimes after this photo was taken, 3rd Street was raised to the present entrance of D.P.Wigley, which now is actually the 4th floor. There are still rings hanging on the 3rd floor where the horses used to be tied up. The Adam and Hay building across the street is now the D.P.Wigley warehouse, but it was also at one time a mortuary and a livery stable. Now I'm thinking maybe we ought to go out to Mound Cemetery and take a look around the grounds out there and see if we can find D.P.Wigley's monument. I know it's out there. Many times I've been out there walking and I've gone past it, but I don't exactly know where it is, so it's going to take some time. Come on, let's go out to Mound Cemetery. Well, after a little driving around here in Mound Cemetery, we finally found D.P.Wigley. There's a family over here. You can come on over here and you can see D.P.Wigley. It's actually, his name was David P. Wigley. No, come over here. It looks like he was born November 25th, 1856 and died December 14th, 1912. And evidently that is his wife over there, Jane Wigley. 1861, and she died in 1946. She lived to be a long and good old age. So, there's our mystery solved. D.P.Wigley.